Welcome to this third video from our June 2023 symposium, First Line of Defense. Following what we've learned about the positive outcomes of children's time in the garden and nutrition, nature, and mindfulness programs, this panel considers the practicalities of bringing a comprehensive awareness of these practices and their outcomes to the attention of school and education policy leaders. We'll hear from a founder of the CDC's Whole School, Whole Community, Whole Child, or WSCC initiative, co-author of the book Well-Being in the Schools, and our partner Kate Tumelty Felice, who implemented the first whole health studies pilot in South Jersey at a middle school a couple of years ago. In addition, the coordinator of the U.S. Department of Education's influential Green Ribbon School program joined us for a briefing on school sustainability and infrastructure plans of the department. So we're now going to move to a new set of folks. Sean Slade at BTS Spark, Dennis Shirley at the Lynch School of Education at Boston College, my partner Kate Felice, whose ethos is what if we did it right now, and we'll have a conversation. I wanted to introduce Sean, who has been a real leader in modifying the natural, the attitudes and potential that exist for schools. When the CDC and ASCD put their brains together and developed the whole school, whole community, whole child framework, which is now widely available across the school systems around the country. Sean was there to be part of that founding team and led the effort to coordinate that for about 10 years with ASCD. Now he is devoted to leadership questions and how to help leaders make these major adjustments that clearly need to be contemplated and put in place. So our question really for everyone, for Sean and for Kate and Dennis, is how can a well-being-based agenda be undertaken by school leaders at all levels in the district, the school, the State Department of Education, and I can't imagine a better group to have dealt with this at every level. Sean, do you want to give us your thoughts?
Yeah, happy to, Taylor, and it was great hearing all those wonderful examples of different well-being health habits that we can put in place in schools, because we all believe that, or we know that schools are the central place where a lot of these skills and mindsets are learnt. I actually want to go back a step and what Larry Rosen was talking about this morning, and he was talking about upstream and what can we do upstream to try and affect what's happening downstream. And when we're talking about schools and we're talking about school leaders, one of the things that I've been conscious of trying to do, and I think we need to, as a community, is change that upstream mindset of what the purpose of education is. Because all of these things that we've been shown the last couple of minutes, and many people have been doing for a couple of decades now in schools, have always run into a contrary mindset of what we, at least in the last, say, 15 years, believe school is for. And if you looked back, I didn't make a complete check of the dates that Larry had, but one thing that I do know changed the mindset of school leaders and school purpose was No Child Left Behind and the re-emphasis of testing. Schools in the early 2000s through to about at least 2015, or probably up until the pandemic, have been really focused around academics, and that's been the purpose. What I think we need to do in terms of this upstream mindset and purpose is reinvigorate the conversation about how schools need to be a center of well-being. They need to be a place that develops the whole child, the whole person. They're not just a content delivery system where we're doling out and reading the academic scores around language arts and math and science. They are institutions, environments, and settings that actually prepare our young people for their future lives, their growth and development, their citizenship. So one thing that I've been trying to do over the last decade or more is really have people understand that school is there to develop the whole person, the whole child. One advantage we have, it is everything has a silver lining, and COVID was not, nothing we want to experience again, though we may likely do that. But one of the advantages of the pandemic was that I think it allowed educators and school leaders, and especially the ones that I liaise with, both, even though they were running frantically around trying to readdress all of their processes and activities, it actually gave them some time to reflect on what they were doing in the institution. Was this why they came into education in the first place? And then it also allowed them an understanding that if they did get out into nature, if they did go out and be physical, if they did take up mindfulness and meditation, if they did eat healthier and get sleep, they were able to start to refocus on their own sense of well-being. And so I think we're at a pivot point here where a lot of people have had, and especially school leaders, a lot of people have had the time to reflect and the reason to really understand the value of well-being, not only for teaching and learning, but also as an outcome, because we want our kids to be mentally healthy, as well as physically healthy and socially and emotionally healthy. I could go on, as many of you probably know, but I want to hear from Kate as well, and Dennis, and then maybe we can engage in a bit of a conversation as well. So unless you have anything else urgent from me, Taylor, I'll leave it there.
Well, that's great. Thanks for that intro and that view, Sean, which is so important to connect the leadership to what actually is led in the schools, as we go forward. Dennis has been kind of a inspiration for me. He and his pal Andy Hargraves wrote this book. As you can see, it's dog-eared extensively. Well-being in the schools is the title, and that really is an idea that is carrying us through into this conversation and this event today. Dennis is just retired from the Boston College Lynch School of Education, and he's got a few slides to show as part of his conversation. Go forward, go with it. Dennis, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Taylor, and thank you, colleagues, for your outstanding and inspiring work. Thank you, Larry, for letting us recognize just again the magnitude of the crisis that we're facing. Laura, the work you're doing with mindfulness in schools, I find really exciting. What could be more important than helping our young people to quiet their minds and calm their bodies so they can be focused for learning? Kathy and Nathan, thank you very much for the work that you're doing with nature. It's so important for children to have that opportunity to feel connected to the earth. Maybe some of the problems that we're having with climate change are related to our disconnectedness from the earth. Marion, I love the work that you are doing engaging school cooks. We have so many people in our academic communities that we don't enlist as part of the learning project, the culturally relevant connection that you're making to cooking and feeding one another as an act of love. I find really uplifting. And Jen, this emphasis on physical activity as brain food, absolutely essential. I know for myself, I always, when I'm stuck with my writing or my teaching or something, I go out for a walk and it totally clears my mind. So I think that we're on a really good path with all of this. One of the problems that we have when we think about getting to a broader dynamic well-being agenda, I think is, and that you all have identified in your presentations, is that we do a number of things in schools that we probably should stop doing, right? So Jen, you identified the absence of movement for young people, which is torturous for them. And one of the reasons that they come to hate school is that they feel so confined. Marian, in most of our schools, the cuisine is disconnected. The teachers don't engage with the kids around what they're eating and their cultures around food. Kathy and Nathan, we very rarely get our kids engaged out in nature. And if you talk with educators about getting the kids out into nature, sadly, a lot of times the response you'll get is, well, are there some grants available for that? As if it costs money to go outside, right? And even in our cities, we can see bird life. Even in our cities, we can look at the sky. Even in our cities, we can look at weather patterns. And Laura, what are we doing that gets our kids so restless? And then finally, I just want to tag on this last theme that you brought up, Sean, which is that we have been data-driven to distraction in our schools. We've been focused on a small number of metrics that have gotten in the way of us attending to our young people's well-being. Now, for me personally, I think there's 3 simple purposes to education. One is we want the kids to get smart. Second, we want them to be healthy. And third, we want them to be good people. It's really simple. Healthy, smart, good. That for me is kind of where we want to go. But we do a lot of stuff that kind of gets in the way with that. So in this book that Andy and I put together, we tried to kind of boil everything down to kind of 3 different things we really need to be thinking about with well-being right now. And if you could just, you can actually go to the next slide here. It's okay, just to kind of race through these and pop over to the next slide. Yeah, so social prosperity. Okay, so this is a very simple term, and it also has to do with the metrics that we use for measuring whether we're doing well as Americans, or in many countries, look at things like the gross domestic product. We look at the economic activity. We say we're at full employment. That's great, okay? And then we think that that's really the definitive matter. But if we go back to the Latin origin of prosperity, prosperus, it means doing well and being well. And so what would we have to do for that? Well, one simple thing we could do is we could look at UNICEF, which ranks the 38 countries that are affluent countries, 40 countries that are affluent countries on child well-being. And pretty much always at the top, it's these pesky, frustrating Scandinavian countries, like Norway was mentioned earlier, but also Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Iceland. And what are they doing in those societies? They basically really invest a lot in their young people, in their schools, in their society. They have very bold anti-poverty programs, and then they create escalators so you can get quickly out of poverty in those societies. They do very simple things, really, like school lunch is free for everybody. School lunch is going to be healthy. There will be activities throughout the day in which children move a lot. There's a whole year of preschool in Norway that is dedicated to being outdoors. And think of it, it's Norway. It's a lot of snow. It's very cold. So social prosperity is thinking about all of these other indicators of well-being. Do the children feel safe? Are they secure at home? Do they have access to food? We gotta tackle our homeless problem. It's way, way out of control. All of those factors. And sometimes I would just want to say, we can't put everything on the schools. So we have to distribute our responsibility for social prosperity for our young people across the society. So that's one of our levers for improving well-being if we want to get to the origins that are causing our current problems. The second one, Larry had brought up, can I have the next slide, please? Has to do with ethical uses of technology. So you can read a lot of people now, and Larry just put up one slide. There's tons of slides about how we throw way too much technology at our young people. And when the young people look at us as adults, they see us glued to our phones and not paying attention to them a lot of the time. It's a disaster. Okay, so if you want to read Jean Twenga's research on this, or many, many others, it's not just that there's a correlation, there's a causation. There's a causation between excessive technology use. So one of the things that I think we really need to think about is how much are we relying on technology? What are some of the other things that we can do, like physical movement, like getting the kids out to have some dirt under their fingers? Nathan, I love the kid climbing the tree. Okay, we got to stop stuff like they're doing in my neighborhood schools here where the kids can't play tag, might get hurt, can't throw a snowball, oop, might hit somebody by accident. No, that's creating enfeeblement. That is not creating well-being. So we have to think about that as well, ethical technology use. And then the third theme that we brought up, next slide, please, has to do with restorative nature. I'm spot on with you. All the research is crystal clear. Get outside. Look, I've lived in Houston. I've lived in cold climates. I've lived all over the place. Getting outside helps your breathing, helps your movement, helps you get ready for learning. And if we can think about how we can do this more systemically in our schools and our environments, that would be great. We should look critically at that social emotional learning chart that was put up there, because if you look at it, there's nothing there about physical activity. There's nothing out there about being in nature. Zero. Nothing about those things that we know are very good for children's well-being. Nothing about how we test them too much. Okay, so we should really think critically about the reform packages that we're putting together. Sean spoke about this briefly with the testing, but sometimes the reformers are wrong. So we need to empower our educators to think critically about the recommendations that are coming their way. Thank you for your kind attentiveness, and I look forward to the interaction afterwards. Here's the book for those of you that are interested in that.
Thank you so much, Dennis. It has been a real pleasure getting to meet you and learn more about your work. We're running a little bit behind, so we're going to try to make up some time by cutting into some of the time set aside for breakout discussions, but we'll get to that later. I want to introduce Kate Tumelty Felice, our stalwart partner from South Jersey, who made it happen at Lakeside Middle School in Millville. Kate does a lot of work with first responders and holistic access. Anyway, Kate, please take it away. Welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. And thank you I'm so inspired by everything that has been said thus far, and looking at educators. And one of the privileges of my job is that I get to teach teachers, people who are going into the classroom to really do this work, a lot of which is being done inherently. And to a point that Chef Marion said before, we have to take care of the people doing that work too, because a lot of them inherently know its importance, but we have to make sure that they have the support and the structure to make it sustainable. So when Taylor asked me about this, I said, if I had to sum it up, and I promise I won't go quite this quickly, but I'll try and keep it quick. Theory to practice. How do we take something that theoretically makes sense and make it tangible and practical so that we are allowing this to happen and we are facilitating this for the people doing the work? To that end, I'm going to ask you to do something that my kids do, since we've all been sitting here for a little bit. So if you can, with one hand, make an okay, because we're all okay, right? The other hand, make a peace. Now switch them. Good. Keep doing it. It's really hard, but if you do that with little kids, they are so fast. Their brains are right there. So little brain breaks. And I did that on purpose because I'm aware of the time, but I want to tell you, you're good. I want to tell you a quick story. And I promise my rabbit hole will come back to why I really think theory to practice is important. One of the privileges of my job is that I get to observe people who are student teachers and going into the practice, which, by the way, I think we all know another critical component of this is that there's a teacher shortage, that this job is hard and a lot of people don't want to go into it. And the attrition rate is horrific. But on the bright note, I get to watch future teachers in their classrooms. Last semester, this particular day, I was going into kindergarten. I live in South Jersey. We are in one of the poorest counties of the state. One of the poorest cities is where I was going into. Not that that's the only variable, but there are a lot of struggles in this particular school. But I'm always inspired when I see my former students who are now trying to make true change in the classroom. So I got to go into kindergarten. And as I walked into this school, there was an active shooter drill as soon as I walked into the building. And if you've ever been into the school, you've seen how this kind of goes down and impacts the learning environment. Most of the kids, business as usual. Kindergarten chaos. It looked like herding cats by the time I got into the classroom. They were all over. There were crayons flying. Kids were just trying to regulate, really, with the disruption in routine and all the other things that I'm sure you can imagine that brings. And in the midst of this chaos that I walk into, and my student teacher is trying to bring the havoc back to be observed, I see a little boy who's about 5, 6 years old. He walks over to the carpet, sits down Indian style, and goes, "I can't even with these people today." And I'm cracking up in my little chair in the back of the room, because he has captured something that I think a lot of us realize. And he proceeds to sit because he can't even with people today. And I feel that to my very core sometimes. And he is just doing his deep breathing. So afterwards, I watched the lesson. The lesson was wonderful, but that struck me, because I said to my student teacher, who, by the way, had been through the program we implemented, because when we had Marion's group come, when we had Holistic Life come, when we did cognitive fitness, the ambassadors of this program were the future teachers. They were the ones who came to help implement this work. They were students, college students, who are going to be teachers. To me, this is where theory to practice comes in. So I said to my student after, what was that about? And she said, I taught my students, the kids, do breathing exercises throughout the day. It helps me as a practitioner because I do it with them. So it brings me down, it brings them down. They have dance breaks, they have movement breaks, which I stole and just did with you. Don't worry, I'm not going to dance. But they have these different things built in throughout the day. And when I spoke of that one little boy after this active shooter drill, which I think we understand the severity of what that does to kids, I said, that was amazing to see him sit down and breathe. And she said to me, and it was really humbling, he just finished a year's worth of chemotherapy. So that skill extended really far outside of the classroom. And so I think really for me, where this work comes in, and where, as Taylor mentioned, I was kind of boots on the ground. Okay, how do we actually do this thing? There's a lot of great things already being done. How do we create the structure and support around it to make it sustainable over time? Those student teachers, I saw one the other day sent me a LinkedIn request, and under her name and what her title was, it said wellness advocate. And I thought that was a self-identified kind of, and I'm not trying to just give you anecdotal, these are small things that happen, although when we weave them together, they make something really beautiful. But I think that when we can, in fact, pull this work together, when that happens, it gives us that justification, which is already there. It's in theory. How does it change in practice? To me, it changes in pedagogy, in how we teach people, not subjects, not content, but how we teach people. And that's how learning happens, is to consider how we teach people. It's a curricular change. It's a student teacher change. It's a pedagogical change. It changes the way we do things and how we implement it. So my question, and I'm aware of the time as we go into this, is we know this works. We know how important this is. This conversation has been incredibly compelling. Then when we put it into practice, as we were able to do beautifully in a lot of different schools in my community, but also in the communities we're talking about, we take that practice and we look at it sustainably. One point I want to make as well that we took into consideration that I think is really important, we looked at the teachers too. Let's make sure we're taking care of the people doing this work. So in the school, Taylor mentioned, we made a reset room for the teachers, not where there's a photocopier, not where you have to do all the work, but where they can take the time to reset so that their well-being is prioritized too. I believe that you can't pour from an empty vessel. I believe that you can't add another box for someone to check off. Oh, did you do this today? Have you accomplished your SEL goals? Have you put this into your lesson plans? It has to be something that there's support and structure for sustainability to continue to occur. So I'm going to pause there. I'm sure we'll have more robust conversations about that. And I thank you for your time and your brain break.
Thanks, Kate, for making us feel inept at doing things that little children can do without even thinking. But right now, I want to ask Adam to replace me with Andrea Falken. And Andrea is the lead for sustainability at the U.S. Department and Sustainability and Infrastructure at the U.S. Department of Education, and also the main coordinator of the very powerful and wonderful school Green Ribbon Schools program, which she can explain just a little bit more. But for 10 or 12 years, Andrea, you have been leading the Green Ribbon Schools program, which has engaged schools all over the country in almost every state, and made sustainability, school gardens, and nature-based learning something that the education department has placed a great value on. So thank you for being here and joining us for a few minutes. And if you have an update for us about the programs at the department, we'd love to hear them.
Sure. How are you doing on, hi, everybody. It's nice to be here. I'm just wondering how you're doing on time. I know you initially had said a certain amount of time, but if you need me to be a little bit briefer because we're trying to catch up, I just want to make sure I hit your time goals.
Time goals are pretty much blown up, but if you can go for 5 minutes or so.
Okay, make sure not more than 5 minutes. Got it.
That'd be awesome.
I'll try to be quick. I feel like after all these inspiring presentations, it's hard to get into the mundane of federal policy, right? But it was nice of you to invite me. I have been working at the department for almost 15 years on sustainability, which is work that we view as integral to whole child health. A lot of the practices that you have been presenting on this morning, I caught a few of them related to gardens and school nutrition, are practices that we see a lot in that program that Taylor mentioned, our U.S. Department of Education Green Ribbon Schools. Let me talk a little bit more broadly about some of the efforts afoot at the department to ensure equitable access to healthy school environments, and I will, in passing, touch on that Green Ribbon initiative. I'll primarily want to mention what's new and innovative, and of course, how you might get involved. Raise the Bar, Lead the World is our current U.S. Education Secretary Miguel Carbona's call to transform education and unite around what truly works to advance educational equity and excellence. You may have heard that one focus area is boldly improve learning conditions, which has as a principal strategy to invest in every student's mental health and well-being. So this is a focus of the current administration. We view this as an invitation to all of us to ensure equitable access to healthy school learning environments, green schoolyards, mindfulness, local farm fresh nutrition, all the good work that you have been talking about on this call. Over the last several years, I've really worked at the department to better engage and collaborate with our federal partners and in the public, as well as stakeholders on what we call whole school sustainability topics. We even proposed in fiscal year 2023, but did not receive funding for an Office of Infrastructure and Sustainability at the department. So a lot of this work is viewed as local and state in this country. For better or worse, Congress doesn't authorize a ton of funding at the federal level at the education agency. But still, we recognize there's room for ed to show leadership and stand up best practices. One of the ways that we do that is through a recognition award that I created in 2011-2012 called U.S. Department of Education Green Ribbon Schools. That award has helped us define green school nationally by offering a comprehensive definition that's holistic and encompassing environmental impacts of the school facilities and grounds, health, and education. And of course, they're all related, as you've been discussing today. We're now in the 12th year of that award, and it's really our flagship program, standing up schools, districts, even early learning centers and post-secondary institutions that have been nominated to our federal education agency by their state education authorities for achieving progress in all of 3 areas. So can't just be one, got to be all 3. The first is reducing environmental impacts and costs. So everything, waste, water, energy, transportation, and of course, a lot of those things affect health as well. The second pillar is improving health and wellness. So environmental health practices and whole child health strategies, such as nutrition programs, outdoors physical activity, all the good work you've been talking about. And then the third part is really that environmental sustainability learning. So getting outdoors, green career preparation, sustainability learning, climate education, all of that good work. If you have a chance to check out their stories on our website, they're doing some amazing things, and it's really all across the country. Every year we stand up these examples, and they're doing work just like what you've enumerated. They have the schoolyard chickens, they have the apiaries, they have the school farms, they engage in mindfulness, yoga, school garden to cafeteria nourishment, and are really ensuring that they're serving students' health and wellness needs in all their various forms. Another thing I think that's worth updating is that over the last few years, I really feel that we have collaborated more closely than ever before with the federal family on topics ranging from healthy school buildings to water and air quality. There's a lot better collaboration, particularly across the Energy Agency, the Environmental Protection Agency, and our Education Agency, really working together to ensure we're promoting all available federal programs for schools and to demonstrate more leadership on whole school sustainability. So I'm really pleased with that. We continue to center equity in this work. Equity is really the fundamental mission of the department. It's central to its creation in the late 70s. There have been a couple new grant programs that might be of interest to this group. One is the school infrastructure grant programs, and those are focused on state capacity building and technical assistance. There are two grants. They're not for schools or districts themselves, but rather for state agencies and likely a nonprofit or higher education institution that would establish a technical assistance center. And those are intended to ensure that schools are healthy, safe, sustainable 21st century facilities and grounds that support high quality learning. And so, of course, that affects some of the health issues that you've discussed. The other one that I think is of interest is the full service community schools, also with a deadline in August. They both have a deadline in early August. The full service community schools support high quality public elementary and secondary schools that use established partnerships to provide well-rounded educational opportunities and meet the social, emotional, physical, and mental health and academic needs of students. So really focusing and intended to support whole child health, as you've been discussing it. Another thing we've done that's kind of innovative, and this will be my last thing because I think we're out of time for me, is our school infrastructure and sustainability pledges. We opened in February, kind of using our bully pulpit, right? We don't have a lot of funding in this area, but we have public engagement. We have our lead role as a leader. We encouraged organizations and businesses to complete an online form to share how they will advance school sustainability. And we had under school sustainability, everything from climate to health to environmental justice, really broad. And the call for pledges is actually still open. If you know of organizations that might want to pledge, we encourage private sector to get involved and tell us what you're aiming to do in the next few years on school sustainability, including health, so that we can promote your goals. And we'll be sharing those. We've received over 36 pledges, and we'll be sharing those all summer long. And they really illustrate the nationwide effort to ensure, and all the different, it's not a federal problem, a state problem, or just a local or school problem. It takes all of us together working at many levels to ensure healthy, safe, sustainable schools. Just to wrap up, I want to note that we at ED, stand at the ready to work with partners. I'm always meeting with different partners, federal, nonprofit, private sector, to think of creative ways to address whole school sustainability and whole child health. And we're always happy to talk with you and get ideas and learn of the leading concerns and brainstorm what we can do to be supportive.
Great, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us and giving this overview of what the department is thinking in terms of the whole child and well-being and the mental health aspects that we're dealing with now. Very much appreciate your joining us. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to check out the other videos from our First Line of Defense Symposium of June 2023, as well as the links to materials related to this video. See the links in the description below.